Welcome to Discovering Your Mission with Dr. Mordecai, the show where we inspire, challenge, and equip you to live with purpose and lead with impact. I'm your host, Dr. Mordecai. And today we have an exceptional guest joining us, Julie Golder. Julie is the Vice President of Search Services for the Association of Community Colleges Trustees, where she has provided leadership for over 200 CEO searches across the community college and technical colleges nationwide. With a career that spans PBS television production, law, and higher education, Julie brings a wealth of experience and insight to the table. Today, we'll dive into her journey and explore her expertise in building diverse leadership pipelines and uncover best practices for effective board leadership in higher education. Stay with us. You don't want to miss this inspiring conversation. Greetings, everyone. Once again, it's Dr. Mordecai, and I'm here with the amazing Julie Golder. She serves as the Vice President of Search Services for the Association of Community College Trustees, ACCT. Julie, how you doing?
I am doing great, and thank you for the opportunity to connect today.
Thank you. I will tell you, you are someone in the business that is to be admired. If you are not familiar with her work, I will tell you that many of the college presidents and chancellors and executives, and that's just a space that you spend so much time in. And when I was thinking about guests that I wanted for this season, I'm like, we got to talk to Julie because there's so much shifts and changes that are happening in higher education. A lot of leadership changes are happening in higher education. And yes, there are these different presidential training institutes and executive training institutes, but there's nothing like talking to someone that you do this every day. And I didn't know how often people get a chance to hear your wisdom. So thank you so much for being on the show, Julie. I want to start with this very first question. So you are a very profound, a very well-known individual in this space, but did you always know that you would be serving in this capacity in higher education? Was this always a part of the plan for you?
No. This niche work of serving governing boards of community colleges throughout the country is very specific, very narrow. I was not familiar with ACCT until I moved to Washington, D.C. in 2006, the year that I started here. And I really didn't start out with the intention of working in this space at all. I actually spent a decade working in public television, bachelor's degree in communication, University of Central Florida, spent about 6 years at WPBT in Miami, working on the production side of TV, moved to Portland, Oregon, worked at OPB and the ABC affiliate, KATU, for about 4 years. Then decided I had enough of that field, wanted to use different parts of my brain, explore something new. So that's when I went to law school in Missoula, Montana, spent an extraordinary summer clerking on the Hill, and decided I wanted to come to DC to work in the higher ed nonprofit space. So a very roundabout route brought me to ACCT.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, Julie. You know, I'm curious, to date, at least based off of the numbers that I've seen, you have led over 100 senior executive searches. And so you get a very unique seat. That number may be higher now. That's the number that I'm familiar with, over 100. But you get a very, very interesting, unique seat at the table for these colleges and universities and entities. Can you help us to understand some of the significant changes you're watching play out in the hiring landscape for community colleges and technical colleges?
Sure. And there are a number of reputable, good firms out there. We happen to support about 30 to 35 searches a year across the country. We have some extraordinary, mostly retired presidents and chancellors that support and lead a number of our searches. And the rate at which transition and change is occurring is exponential. it is fast moving and complicated. The tenures are getting shorter. The expectations, as you know, for the job keep getting higher every year. So one of our focuses as an organization that works with governing boards is not just how do you have a process of integrity that is transparent, involves all voices, is equitable, involves diverse voices. But once you go through this expensive, time-consuming 6, 8, 9-month process, how do you retain top talent? So we're also trying to think of ways to work with boards on onboarding, getting things off to a really great start. Is a retreat needed? How do you set the stage for long-term success so these tenures don't keep getting shorter? That's not healthy for the industry, the institutions, or the students that we all serve.
Powerful that you share that. Powerful that you share that. I'm curious to know, in terms of qualities and skills, for the in-demand leaders of today, what advice do you have for those that are watching this and they're thinking about, yes, I have aspirations to serve in one of these executive roles? When you think of skill, when you think of approach, when you think of acumen, what is some knowledge, some wisdom, some advice you would have for someone that is saying, hey, I need to make sure I've got this in my toolkit to be a long tenured executive in today's market?
So the profiles cover everything. So for someone aspiring to a presidency, I would say take 2 or 3 profiles and turn every bullet point into a question. So if you can ask yourself, please provide 2 or 3 examples, and go down and see what areas you may have some gaps. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, they want as many of those quality skill sets, experiences as possible. For someone who hasn't been in the seat, sometimes the rainmaker part, how do you bring in external resources, is really hard for someone who isn't a CEO. So I think it's always good to think through strategies to get that piece under your belt. But the other part is committees are going to assume if you come up through academic affairs, they're going to assume the faculty relationships, the accreditation knowledge is there. So how do you frame your answers to also include the other parts of the house where perhaps you don't have the experience? And those are also other ways to think through your readiness.
Powerful. Thank you for sharing that wisdom. Let me ask you this. What challenges do community colleges and technical colleges face, in your opinion, in attracting top talent today?
Wow, that is such a good question. In terms of skill sets, I want to piggyback a little bit on the last question. And every couple of years, you'll see articles on the top 5, top 7 skills that are most needed. A word that resonated with me that I saw in a recent one that was posted in Inside Higher Ed was resilience. Again, that complexity keeps growing. Politics, internationally, nationally, I think that has exponentially become more complicated. The enrollment piece, more complicated, fewer resources, more complicated. So the job is really hard. So how do you become more resilient? And I think experience helps. So again, taking on as much as possible the things that maybe other people don't want to do that aren't as popular, so that you become strong in the areas that aren't in your comfort zone.
That's great. That's great, Julie. Let me ask you this, and I've heard this stated for a number of years. Now being a president for 3 years, I get it. But I think that outward looking in, I didn't necessarily understand it. I understood it to a certain dynamic. That is hearing the word fit, this idea of being a fit for an institution. And there's what the institution understands of itself, the culture, the organizational culture of that institution. And then I could only imagine what the candidate sees for themselves, their own personal approach to leadership. And then there's this marriage that has to happen to find that quote unquote right fit. What role does organizational culture play, in your opinion, in these institutions finding the right leader?
It's huge. It cannot be understated because I'm sure, as you've seen, someone that could be successful at institution A may not be successful at institution B, even if it is in a neighboring county. So having a really solid understanding of the culture, the values, where that institution is at this moment in their history, where they want to go, and to really have a heart-to-heart with yourself. Are you the right person at this moment in their history? And by the same token, something that we work really hard with is that profile has to reflect all of this, because that's really the college's marketing tool to attract the right group of candidates. So in other words, if an institution needs a healer, that needs to be reflected. If they need someone for fast and rapid change and innovation because they're behind, that needs to be reflected in the profile. So something that we work really hard with boards and search committees is be upfront in your presidential profile about what you are looking for and reflect all of that, because candidates read those carefully to determine if they could be successful, if they want to put their career on the line by submitting an application.
What advice, Julie, this is a follow-up to that, what advice would you have for someone who has went through the presidential search process or that executive search process? And they really did a great job. I mean, they were awesome. But as you think about organizational culture, it didn't marry. What advice would you have for that person who their heart is hurt, their feelings are hurt, they really thought that they had a good shot at this? What would you say to them?
That is not the fun part of this work. I mentioned the word resilience earlier. And I am going to stick to that, because in life, if we want something enough, we have to stick with it. And there are those rare candidates that land a presidency on their first or second time out. That is not the norm. I don't know if any formal research has been done in the area, but most of the candidates that we talk to have been through it 6, 7, 8, 9 times. They refine a little bit more each time. They become a little more concise with their interview questions. They do a little more homework. So in other words, if the presidency is your career goal and there is a tremendous need, the retirements keep coming, we want to encourage people to stick with it, get different opinions. And I always love when I see candidates that maybe have more than one mentor out there and ask different search consultants, what do you think? How can I improve? How can I land this position? Because there is a subjective element to this, and putting your full faith in one voice may not be the best approach.
Listen, there's so much gold in what you just said, and I hope that the watchers and listeners are paying attention. Let me ask you this, Julie. You are switching gears here, thinking about what's currently happening in the landscape of higher education. What trends do you foresee shaping the future of leadership in community and technical colleges?
And I know this is the answer probably everyone shares for everything, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but AI is going to be huge. And we don't know how it's going to be huge or when it's going to explode, but that's, of course, on the horizon. And I think sort of the counterpart to that is the emotional intelligence, or maybe the 180 to it. because the human connection, the human understanding is irreplaceable.
You in your journey have been able to navigate several spaces. I mean, you just talked about, as we kicked off this interview, you worked in television and media. You're now in Washington, D.C., a place that I certainly enjoy every time I get a chance to visit there. You can just feel in the air. Deals are getting done and lives are being changed, and hopefully for the better. You can just feel it in the air. Let me ask you this. What are some of the challenges that you've had to navigate? I think that this is being asked with the spirit of, if there's someone that ever wanted to be a Julie, ever wanted to be a Julie Golder growing up, or someone that wants to really learn, and this is a mentorship moment for them to understand, how does someone like Julie navigate the spaces that she's navigated? Can you just kind of bring us in a little bit into some of the challenges that you've had and how you've navigated those spaces?
I think a lot of curiosity is really important. There's value in everything that we do along the way, every connection we make, every path that we have the opportunity to venture down. So I've tried to say yes to as many things as possible, even when they're outside of your comfort zone, because that's how you grow, doing the things you don't necessarily feel comfortable doing. And then that repeated exposure just makes things a little easier as we progress. When I was in my early 20s, starting out in TV, I would show up 2 hours before my shift, and I'd sit in the back and just observe and take in as much possible. So I think there's a lot of value in saying yes, a lot of value in exposure, and maybe trying to work a little harder than the competition. If everyone leaves at 5:30, stay till 6. And again, I know that isn't always possible. We all have other outside demands to balance. But we gain something from everything we do. And what can you add as your personal takeaways as you go down life's path?
A lot of wisdom there, Julie. Thank you. You know, the name of the show is called Discovering Your Mission. And I'll tell you, this has been a fast few minutes with you. Wish we had more time, but I always like to ask my guests to share with us, what is their mission statement? What is it that drives or centers them, and give us a sense of their why. So at this time, Julie, please share with us your mission statement.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe this is more of a motto with keeping in the forefront community college students from throughout the nation in mind. But it's one that you've heard before. Work hard and be nice.
And why does that resonate? Why does that resonate for you, Julie?
I don't think there's any substitute for hard work, and there's so much value in treating everyone respectfully.
I love it. I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, Julie Golder. Thank you so much, Julie, for your time and your wisdom shared on today.
Thank you for all you do.
On today's episode of Discovering Your Mission with Dr. Mordecai, we heard from the incredible Julie Golder, Vice President of Search Services at ACCT. Julie shared her wisdom and offered transformative insight into the world of higher educational leadership. At this point in my show, I'd like to share my 3 key takeaways from my time with Julie. However, I encourage you to identify the key takeaways that most resonate with you. But here are my 3. Number 1, resilience and growth. Julie emphasized the importance of resilience in leadership, sharing that most candidates refine their skills over multiple attempts before landing a presidency. She reminded us that perseverance, adaptability, and continuous learning are keys to success. Number 2, leadership readiness. Julie offered actionable advice for aspiring leaders, suggesting they turn presidential profiles into self-assessment questions to identify and close skill gaps. She also highlighted the value of expanding expertise beyond one's comfort zone. Last but certainly not least, mission-centered leadership. With her personal motto, work hard and be nice, Julie reminded us that success stems from effort and respect for others, a principle that resonates in every corner of leadership. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. As always, head over to itsdrmordecai.com for more episodes, articles, and content. Take care.